I'm Ellen. I'm our Community Programs Director for the Fringe. I forgot to say that. And I'd love to start out just asking you guys your name, what your involvement in Fringe has been. So I know you've done a couple shows, and then any awards, accolades, awesome things that you've done with your show since.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm Nikki Muller. My show that I think I'm here to discuss that would make sense is Definition of Man, which was a 2-person physical theater show that won Best in Dance and Physical Theater and the Ripest Show Award in 2017's Fringe. We took it to Edinburgh Fringe in 2018, and this year we got a Ovation nod. Woo! Woo! And I directed a show last year, 45 Milligrams, that got nominated for world premiere, I think, Fringe First. And I also co-wrote a few musicals in the past that got nominated for musical, which is also a group of people, so that's Ensemble as well.
Sweet.
Go for it. Come on in.
This is Royce.
So go ahead. Yeah, John.
I'm John. I did a show. My first Fringe was in 2018. I did a 2-person show. I wrote it, produced it with a buddy of mine, and acted in it, and he directed it. And it was called Ain't That America. We won the Fight the Power Award, which was one of the sponsored awards. We won that in 2018. And then that show we did in a little theater festival in Inglewood. So we got to do it a second time out here in Southern California. And then last year, 2019, I did my anti-musical, All Our Pretty Songs, which we got an encore for that. We did it at Studio C. And so, yeah, that was a 3-person show, and I was also in it and also produced it with my same creative partner with Ain't That America.
Oh, so I guess I'm next then.
Yeah,
Okay.
just your name,
Yeah.
what shows you've produced, shows, and then any like awards or accolades that you may have gotten.
All right. Well, I'm Royce. I produce the Color Collective. We started doing the show in 2018. So our first year we won an encore award, and then we did it again last year, and we won another encore as well as got nominated for Best Cabaret Variety Show. So it's a kind of a big task. We have probably about like 20 people, so getting all of them together, definitely takes some work. But it's fun.
At the Fringe especially, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. How big was the stage that you were producing 20 people on? Like this size?
No, it was. We were over at the Omar Theater at the complex, so we had a little more space, but yeah, still it was a task.
We can just go through that. Yeah, please don't worry. That's no big deal.
Okay. It's cash.
It's a casual conversation. Cool. So I just wanted to ask, is anybody here writing a musical? Cool. So we are going to touch base with another musical that wrote, the next panel has somebody who wrote a musical on it too. Cool. Just produced a musical. And that is possible. And like Roy said, you can have a show with like 20 people. Does anybody have like an idea with like a large cast? Or yeah. So it's totally possible. It's just a totally different animal. And I just wanted to kind of say that so that you kind of had that in mind. So kind of jumping into like the creative process of what you guys have done for the Fringe. How long did it take you to decide to produce it or to do the writing process? And did you work with anyone else to help get that done? And anybody can start. Popcorn.
So it did. We knew we wanted to do the show probably right around, I would say like in January, before Fringe. So just kind of started going to the panels and town halls to find out, okay, what do I need to do? And then once we, got everything registered, then it was just all about like, okay, writing the show.
You're like, I'm going to put down money and then I'm going to write it.
Right. Well, because ours was unique because it's a lot of it was a variety with combination of sketch and stand up and music and everything. So to write the sketches honestly doesn't take that long. So that was okay, and plus it was more than just me writing. It was, we had like pretty much like a writer's room of people. So it really was like taking a village to raise this child. That was the show.
Bryce, did you guys have a team before you decided to do Fringe, or did you develop the team for Fringe?
Yes. So we did have we were running the show for almost a year at that point when we decided to do Fringe, and so it was kind of like an easier transition for us, just because like, okay, we already were confident that we know the show works, and it was just a matter of putting it up on a bigger stage and multiple times in a month, which we're used to doing one show a month. Now we're doing 6, so that takes a little bit getting used to, and you have to kind of attack it a little bit differently.
Cool.
For me, so I graduated college in spring of 2018, and somebody in August, an acting coach of mine out here, was like, you should do the Hollywood Fringe Fest. And so I was like, okay, what is that? And from Mississippi, I just Googled online and like talked to him about it, and then signed up and was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. So I had really no idea what I was getting myself into, seeing I was 1,800 miles away from. I didn't come to a panel like this beforehand. I just was advised to do it, and my friend Dan, who's my creative partner, director, acts in the shows with me, I was like, hey, you want to move to LA in May and then do this festival? And he was like, sure. So
Okay.
I started working on a show, and the questions that I was asking myself based on like my minimal research of the Fringe process was like, how can I do this inexpensively? How can I do this with somebody that's reliable and not have like a cast of 6 of people that I don't know yet, and rely on them to do it? Like I knew my buddy Dan would like show up and show out. And so I was like, how can I be as minimal as possible, have reliable people, and do this inexpensively? And so I started looking at the Fringe deals, like what's a 50-minute show cost, what's a 60-minute show cost, what's a 90-minute show cost, because everything has like a different price. And so from understanding like, did I want to do a 1-act, did I want to do a full length, that's when I was able to really like shape my idea into a format that would be easily produced and acted and taken with a 15-minute load in and a 15-minute load out, and create the piece that would serve all those elements that are completely necessary to having a successful Fringe show. So I wrote a two-man show, and all Dan and I used were trunks, and we had like props in it, and we just moved them around in the show, and that was like our set. Super easy load in, super easy load out. And then the next year we wanted to like take it up a notch, and we had a full drum kit to load in and load out, and that was an absolute shit show. So we learned a lot, but basically the main thing is like look at what the Fringe is, what the deals are with the theaters, and learn how you can shape your piece, shape your ideas to meet what's best for you and fall within the guidelines and parameters that are set by the festival.
Do you mind if I really quickly kind of tell some ideas of what that parameter might be so you have it in your head? An average Fringe show is about 50 minutes so that they have a little bit of time on that loadout. Hour slots are pretty common. That being said, everything that we say on stage is like meant to be broken, and people have done the opposite and done very, very well. So most of it, but like a lot of the main theaters will have blocks where you have like a 20-minute loadout and a 20-minute load in. So it's that very quick turnaround. So that's why they're saying very minimal, making sure that everything is like very tight. Our next panel is about people who have broken that rule in small theaters and done that in 20 minutes, like The Last Croissant or like musicals that like bring in like
It's
huge
insane.
sets.
Yeah.
And you're like, how?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you how they did it or didn't do it, you know? And then other things as far as like finding a venue, there's a Fringe zone. It's a 2 square mile radius. It's like Top Franklin, bottom, and these are not the exact streets, there's more exact streets online. The bottom is like a block south of Melrose, kind of the border of East Hollywood and the border of West Hollywood, so a little sliver of both. But it's like very much inside there. You can bring your own venue if you're like, I want to do this in my apartment. People have done it.
That's true.
Inside of the Fringe zone. People have done it in parks. But a lot of theaters that do Fringe every year, this being one of them, or there's lots around here. You should look up at hollywoodfringe.org/venues. You can see all the lists of people who have done it before. And we also have a venue panel, which will be in January before registration opens. And they'll tell you all the things that you need to know about their venues. That being said, venues are already doing open houses or doing other things. And we have some venues that'll be on our speed dating later if you want to ask anybody more specific questions.
So definition of man existed before we took it to Fringe. My partner and I wanted to do, but it was sort of created with touring in mind. So similarly, we knew we wanted it to be like no more than an hour. We wanted to just be 2 people. We wanted to be a very, very simple set so you could essentially do it anywhere. So it basically just had cardboard on the floor and 2 props. And then it was a physical show, so it was like all just counterbalancing and craziness.
It was crazy. You guys literally did it outside at one of our parties.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did. And we're still doing it.
Yeah.
And we keep getting better at acrobatics, very specific to our show. I can only do some things on one side. Like, I could do that, try it on the left. No, cannot do it. But so we just were reading shows and we were thinking of creating a piece, and then we talked about inspiration together. So if you have people you want to work with and people you want to write for, of course you don't have to and you can cast your show, but it does help to have like the input. That's how like I worked on the musicals I worked with. We already had the core group and we sort of created it together so that each person's unique strengths or voice was represented. But it is still good, I think, to have a main writer, because then you have a unified tone. And also it's like too many cooks, it's you wind up with like a bloated script that has schizophrenia if you have like 5 writers on something all trying to get their like vision at once. So it does help to have input as like a solo writer from other people while you're creating. So basically that's how our show came to be, is we talked about it. I went off and wrote it without his consent, and then he consented because he loved it. He was like, I thought we were doing this together. I'm like, sorry, I wrote it. Because I just got really inspired, but it was, in my opinion, like one of the best things I've ever written. So I'm like, sorry, but not sorry. And then we found a director and we just workshopped it for a while, and then we just got really annoyed because, nothing happens unless you do it yourself. And Fringe is awesome for that because it's really easy to make stuff happen. And I was already involved in other shows, and I was like, let's just do it this year. So we had got the venue, we put it up, and it worked great. And then one of our friends approached us to ask if we would help produce and direct his show. And so already having gone through it, that was very helpful in like knowing, and that was an ensemble piece as well. So that one I actually had to cast. Yeah. Because I didn't write it and didn't create it. But like knowing what the parameters and what the strengths and weaknesses are of doing a Fringe show and what's an easier sell, that did help a lot going through that. And if any of you are interested in touring other Fringes, like internationally, I can say like full-heartedly that like the more like elegantly simple you make your show, the less heartache it will be on you. If you want to have a big cast, that's fine, but just like know you're inviting that into your life. because you can't control other people.
And some people will be like, I'm going to write it as a big show here because I know that I can cast it here.
If you
and
can,
I know that I
yeah.
have friends here. And then we'll
Exactly.
simplify it to tour it
Yeah.
other places.
So, like, just think about, like, it's great to have a vision, it's great to write, but, like, if you're also producing it, just like, when we created Definition of Man, we created it with, like, what can we fit in our car? What could we fly with? What could we recreate? And, like, having that was, like, it made it actually possible. We got to do it in Germany, we did it in Scotland, and, like, we just found cardboard boxes to create our stage. And we've done it, like, in living rooms and other places without the cardboard. So if you want to take your work elsewhere, I can't say, like, if you have a piano, you can't, you know, like, what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, everything is meant to be broken. So you're like, I don't want it to be simple. Like, you'll find out later how to do that too. Or if you're like, I want to, that's great too. One of the best, like, advice, like, I moderate a lot of these panels, and the best advice I've ever heard from somebody on a panel was incredible advice. It was, think about what you want to do with your show, what the life of your show is going to be. See if any other shows fit your genre and the life after that show that you want for yours. See their process.
Yeah.
See if you can talk to them and kind of get some inspiration from that, and then, like, be like, yes, I accept that. Yes, no, I don't, and, like, kind of piece together your own path.
That is good advice.
Isn't that so? I was like, oh my god, that's great. And all of our shows, like, if you wanted to look up any of the shows they're mentioning just to kind of see how they, like, set up their page on the Fringe, they all are still live on the Fringe. And you can message people on the Fringe site to be like, hey, what's going on? Really, really liked your stuff. You know, are you going to be at any office hours or whatever? Cool. So this is, like, kind of related. How do you keep on a schedule when you decide, I'm going to write a piece? And how do you stick to that? That must and dealing with writer's block in that process as well.
What's the sign-up deadline this year? Like, when you have to make your first?
Every
sign-up?
year, it's February 1st as the registration opens, and then you have to have your stuff submitted by April 1st to be in the guide. Then you have a few more days to approve stuff. But you can sign up literally a day before Fringe. You just won't be in our guide, and that's a big reason why you want to be as part of the Fringe, is to be able to be in that guide and be in all of the advertisement that goes out, because it's one of the benefits of doing the Fringe.
I would recommend, like, joining a writing group if you don't already. Of course, the guideline of, like, you have to submit to Fringe, so you have to have, like, the title of your show to be in, you know, like, those are good.
Yeah.
But to help yourself out, to have, like, a little bit more, I find, like, writing groups are really helpful. Because even if you could technically flake on them, having the accountability of your peers and other people is very helpful. Plus, you get group feedback. There's, like, a lot of random writing groups like that everywhere, and I'm certain, I, like, don't have them off the top of my head, but I, like, you could even create your own, like, with the people in this room, like, hands down. It helps everybody, and there's lots of impromptu ones that people throw together, so that's what I would suggest.
There's a writing group with Matt Quinn over at Studio C that's going on right now, and it's like a lot of Fringers are a part of it, and it's like every Wednesday we show up with 10 to 15, 20 pages of what we're working on. We all read it together, we talk it through, we critique each other, and it's been, like, super helpful. Like, 3 people have written full-length stuff already.
Wow, that's great.
So look into that. Matt Quinn, he's a part of the Asylum Theater Group. You can look him up on the French side as well.
He'll be at the speed dating.
Yeah.
He's, like, everywhere.
I also thought, this is random, maybe related, Sacred Fools produces Serial Killers, which is, like, little episodic plays that people vote on, and if it gets voted back, you write another episode, and those have been strung together into full-length things. If you already have written something, you could technically, like, piece out your play and submit it. That's, like, a great deadline. Like, you actually produce your play weekly. So you can just, like, Google that. You could submit to them, too.
Yeah.
That's a great... And they're always looking for new voices. So, like, it's not just company members. It's usually actually LA writers of all sorts who submit.
Yeah. And then there's something called, like, Something After 5 or something. If you're on the Fringe Facebook groups, people post about these things a lot, but there's some, like, other thing that it's like a weekly reading at a bar or something.
Yeah, it definitely helps like when you have a group of people that are writing things together. So say like for us with kind of having like a writer's room set up, we're constantly going through and writing and rewriting, and so just to kind of, and as far as like keeping it with a schedule, just like knowing like, okay, how much time do we have until we have to start rehearsals? Okay, all that time, beforehand, just like, all right, every week we make this little change or try this, try that. Because I would say like we really did start doing our rehearsals maybe like a month and a half before our first show, so that we could get in like, at least like, 6 3-hour rehearsals, so we know that, all right, everyone's going to know their lines, everyone's going to know their blocking, so that there aren't any, there are always going to be surprises, but so there aren't any surprises that we're not prepared for, I should say. And the same with the writing, like, because even through that rehearsal process, allow yourself to be like, okay, you know what, this line works better, or this one we can cut this, because you also want to just make sure you give yourself enough time so that you don't have to rush, because Fringe is a lot, especially if you're writing it and producing it, and like dealing with all like the venue emails and other just like emails of things like, okay, hey, like this Fringe event's going on, that's going on. It can be a lot to take in, especially when you even factor in marketing your show too. So giving yourself the most time possible to get it done without going crazy is definitely the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, people have totally broken this rule, but a good rule is, like, pick 2 hats, right? Decide if you want to be, like, a producer and a writer, or a director and a writer and hire a producer, or, like think about what it needs to be done and make sure that you have plenty of support in that process, because otherwise it's really hard. That being said, I've had people that are like, it was just me, and I did absolutely everything, and had beautiful, beautiful, beautiful shows. So...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a choice between that and it not happening, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we basically have always wound up producing our show,
Oh,
even when
yeah.
it's been produced, because
Yeah.
they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you do this? No, I guess I'm also producing this show now.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the kind of thing where,
But there's 2 of you.
yeah,
There's-
but
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I guess maybe not. Who knows? But like I've said, like
I'm the mother of the piece. I'm like, did you clean your room? No? Okay, fine. I guess I'm gonna do it. Did you email them? Did
Yeah.
you email them? Did you email them? I'm gonna do it.
No, totally. And like if you have, like, I think that's a great way to do it, or to say it is like, no matter what, it's gonna be your baby if you wrote it,
Yeah.
right? But also, since you guys are so early and thinking about people who start writing in January, you can start thinking of that too, which is kind of helpful.
It is great that you're here now, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're thinking about it, and like a lot of the process is just like letting the ideas like settle, and just like by starting thinking about it, you're already ahead of the curve.
Like if anybody was like, I've written a page already, I'd be like, wow, you're so
Nice.
far ahead.
Yeah.
I have a title. I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Cool. So another question that's more on like the creative process or writing process for you, it can be general, not just your Fringe show. How do you get into like the mind of your characters, or one character, I guess? Are they a reflection of you or other people in your life, or is it more just like, that's cool, I'll write about that?
It's kind of easier just like to write what you know, and when you're writing for, like if you're writing a play or whatever kind of piece, because if you're trying to create a character from scratch that nothing about that experience, it's going to be a lot harder than injecting yourself into it, or something that like situation very well into it. So otherwise, like especially if you're doing it yourself and you're writing something that's completely like outside of you, yeah, I would definitely advise get help, talk to people, ask, go to the writers groups, all those sorts of things. But otherwise, just getting into it, like it's much easier if you write what you know, then the ideas tend to come a little bit faster and are a little bit more solid, you know, in the process, which just kind of makes it a little bit easier.
Does anyone like have no ideas whatsoever? You're just like here to like get inspired.
Cool.
Okay, sweet. For me, like, I started from a place of I'm gonna do the Fringe festival, so like I was gonna do it. I just didn't know what I was gonna do, and so that for me, kind of like sticking on the write what you know principle. I just my show Ain't That America was basically an anti-Trump show with pro-Trump characters, kind of about the parallels between the mainstream Republican Party and right-wing extremist terrorism, and like the dichotomy of explored through these two characters. And a lot of my inspiration came from my dad's friends' Facebook posts. So I just was like, he's not like that. He's cool. He trolls them. So, but like, I would just read stuff, and I was like, you know, this is like a really interesting thing that's going on in our society right now. Me being from the South, I kind of have a plug into this in a way that other people don't. So I just like copy and pasted a bunch of Facebook posts and strung them into dialogue. And there's way more work into it than that. But so yeah, I started from the place of I'm doing Fringe, and then just kind of like put my feelers out of what I could create for myself, what I could speak to uniquely as someone moving to California from the South. Like what could my perspective create to bring an interesting piece to resonate with people that I don't know and know nothing about. And so that's kind of where I came from with my creative process, my first show.
I think that's like a really cool point about like sourcing from Facebook. I think it's really important to try to like find other people's perspectives and viewpoints, even if it's in like creative random ways, like your dad's friend's Facebook post, which is, I think is great. Because like sometimes when you're, like you said, like writing from what you know is going to be the most authentic. And also like I've seen it where people try to write, like a man who writes a woman cluelessly is like one of the most horrible things, you know, like you're like, oh. So it's always helpful to like kind of try to either interview or source or witness or research if you're trying to get something that's outside of yourself. It is certainly easiest to write something close to yourself primarily, but like if you're willing to put in the work, I think it's possible. With our piece, I was creating for specific people, which was myself and my partner, and it is like unabashedly autobiographical. So when I was writing his monologues, I literally would just say like, monologue about masculinity, monologue about growing up Puerto Rican. I'm like, I'm not gonna write that. Like, how can I write that without? So then I would speak to him, and he would talk, and I would write to get his voice, because like it felt like very like offensive to presume I could write for him without having him in the room actively, and I think that really gave our piece, you know, both like authenticity because it was from both of us, but a unified tone because I wrote it out. But I did not want to touch those sections because those were his and they were his, you know? In regards to like and I love that you like literally took quotes to work from that, because I've seen like anti-Trump stuff where it's like so colored by like, these people are stupid, and when you see somebody writing that someone they think they're stupid, it's just like one dimensional and there's no truth behind it. It's just like a mockery, like just like, you know, there's no depth or comment or understanding behind it. So I think when you're trying to do something that's like a different perspective or something you might not immediately understand, taking the time to try to like put in the work to move your own understanding or get the different perspective really, really pays off. It's like, I recommend like the placeholder. Like if you're alone and writing and you're like, I want like a disabled woman from Guatemala to do this monologue, I would like recommend like, let me talk to someone who has lived that instead of assuming you know what that is, because I think it's very important to represent different voices, but I also think it's very important to actually like try.
Engage
Yeah.
with those voices that you're representing.
And that said, also, like diversity and inclusion, I think is like really awesome, and it's like a trend that's growing in theater. If you have like a blank slate, I would highly recommend considering writing for women, because you will, if you're gonna cast it, you will get like 80% more women. Just like a pro tip. Or gender blind casting. That's just like a very pragmatic technique.
Yeah.
As a woman who is like, we have 5 male roles and there's like 2 dudes auditioning, and then you have like 12 women for like the 1 woman part, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
It'll make your life easier.
Yeah,
to
how
cast.
do you guys decide who you're gonna? Because you guys have a different show all the time, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do you have different? Did you have different casts during the Fringe?
We did.
Yeah.
We did slightly, just because when you have like between 15 to 20 people in the cast, not everyone's going to be able to make all like 5 or 6 shows, especially if a lot of them are working actors. So we would have understudies, and so people would learn multiple parts, and like, okay, you're playing this part on Tuesday and Thursday, but then you're gonna go back to your regular thing for the Saturday show. So a lot of it was just writing it to be gender blind a lot of times, and sometimes when a writer would submit like, okay, here I have the sketch, like, all right, does it have to be a guy? No? All right, I'll switch it, because we had more women in our cast than men. So it was like, well, just write for who you have, and also write things where, well, it doesn't really matter what they are. It's more about the person, like the individual and the character. And if this happens to be better played by a woman, then okay, do it. You can just really, when you don't give yourself limits for that, it makes it a lot easier. So a lot easier to cast things, a lot easier to then write for that individual and like their individual talents and skills. It'll just save you a little bit of a headache later. And if a part is written well enough, or if it's one of those that anyone could play this, that also helps, so that when someone is out and then getting someone else to play that role, we can kind of maybe switch a couple of lines so it fits, or kind of like editing certain things on the fly, which sometimes can work and sometimes not, depending on what it is that you're writing. But allowing yourself some space into what you envision a character as, or who you envision it as, that can make things easier. Because like, say, if you're for myself, if I'm writing something and I'm envisioning someone that looks like me, but then there's this other person that comes along like, oh wow, they could do this better, then I'll just write it for them. Like, just like taking the ego out of it, or taking what you might have originally envisioned out of it, and going for, this would actually be better. I can get a different perspective, or I can get a different just get a different feel out of it.
Yeah. This one's like a hard one, because I feel like, this answer is weird. But the editing process for you, when is the work finished, and who has the final say? And what do you ask for notes in that process, or when do you start to? Like, it's kind of like a multifold question about editing your work, and when do you stop?
Yeah. That could you could basically never stop.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think once you see something like staged, you'll often be like, oh, in a person's mouth, those words don't work at all.
Yeah.
So keeping the door open to that, I guess, would be wise. I think it's always nice to send something out. I think there's like a sacred time when you don't take notes, because it's like the newborn with the soft head. You don't want anybody to abuse it. But it's like, I think it's personal preference for each writer, and also like the piece. If it's a piece you're like getting tons of feedback and it's like less your property or your baby, then I feel like whatever, this and that. But I think it just depends. I'm sure you guys have like different
Did you get people to give notes on your show, even though it was so personal to the two of you?
I mean, like, yes, and then if people didn't like it, I'm just like, you're wrong. And I just like, so that's also your preference. Like, you can get notes, but if, like, you're producing it, you can take them or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
But, like, most of the editing, I feel like for ours, since it was very personal, took place between ourselves because we had ownership entirely of the piece. And if we found something sounded weird when we were doing it, it helped that we were also the actors. Thank God we were not the directors. That would have been too much.
2 hats. Well,
Oh
3
my
hats.
God, so many hats.
Yeah.
Too many hats. But like, yeah, just it was more like what flowed, what didn't. In the moment, you're like, oh, I keep dropping that. Maybe we just don't say that anymore, you know. But that piece really cohered very, very quickly. So I feel like it's very unusual because normally editing, I think it's a few passes, you send it to friends, they're like, I didn't get who this character was, and you're like, huh, you like work on it some more. I think it's nice to send it to people you trust instead of people who are going to be like a little like either not thoughtful or overly mean about it. You know, send it to the people you know can give you constructive criticism or like will give you something more than just like, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we want to be better. Yeah. So, and of course, like, I would recommend, like, putting it to rest, taking a weekend, and then you could read it with fresh eyes once you've given yourself some time as well. I always learned, like, edit and edit and edit and edit from my creative writing teachers. Like, you can always cut a word. And that's, like, again, for Fringe, if you can cut stuff, do it. Because so much time is added by an audience. So you'll think like, oh, this is fine. I can fit in 60 minutes. And you'll run the show and it'll have like 10 minutes and suddenly the 10 minutes are gone. Because like in the
Waiting
moment,
for laughs
you're waiting for laughs. Our show is not funny. But there's still sounds from audience that happens. Like, and there are laughs because it's like human response. Even if it's not a comedy, you have to like give yourself space. And also, it's like, let's say you're doing great and you sell out your audience. Well, if everyone's filing in, it's going to take a little bit more time than if you have like a half-sold house. So in editing, I always recommend like cut things.
Definitely.
Yeah, that I would say too, like especially like with having like a large audience coming in, that's where it also helps to kind of going back to the point of having, you know, minimal load in stuff where it's like, okay, we don't need that much time to take. So like for our show, essentially our very first, you know, scene, we didn't need anything on stage other than the people. So we just had to wait for our DJ to go in and set up, and you know, we set up our like concession in the front, and we would open the doors like say 15 minutes early, just to give ourselves time so we could start exactly on time. We're not waiting for anything. We're not holding for, you know, for the audience or anything. Or if we do, we can hold for 5 minutes and we know that we kind of have that built in, so that this way you don't have to worry about it and you don't have to. Because the worst thing would be to you're doing a show and going over. Like that's the thing that you don't want to do. So try to do things to prevent that. So if you feel like, okay, might be going a little long, or like you feel like, all right, this isn't necessarily needed. It's also the benefit of doing a preview show, which I would definitely recommend. So this way you have time before like the festival starts in earnest to, okay, we need to, cut this down. We need to take this out. Like this isn't necessary, because that's definitely probably the biggest rule of Fringe. Do not go over.
Yeah.
By preview, I just have a question. Was that a preview before like the Fringe previews?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like a show that you did even before Fringe previews, which are just the week before the festival.
Yeah. So so even doing that, even if depending on your show, if if you go into it, say with the critical eyes, like, all right, let's see what works, let's see what doesn't. This isn't just about like, hey, all right, we're starting, we're going to do an extra show. It's like, okay, let's see how this goes, and if you need to do any editing, if there's something that doesn't work or is taking too long, sometime because certain things you really just don't know until you get on the stage and actually put the show up fully. So like giving yourself time to be able to do that helps.
So for editing for me, my show last year started out as a 5-person 90-minute show with 6 songs. And so I wrote the whole thing, and through like workshopping it, we did our first read of it in January. Then we did our second read in February. And then we did Signed Up already February 1st. And then you have to make your like payment for what you want on April 1st in your venue deal. So if I had done a 90-minute 5-person show, that would have been a much different project than what it turned out to be a 60-minute 3-person show. And we made our editing decisions based on like how we felt the product would be the most feasible to pull off within like my buddy Dan, he and I did the show again last year. And we were like, we don't know a ton of people here yet. Like, how big of a theater could we realistically get people in? If we have 5 people, do we have 5 people that we trust, that we know really well, that we know are going to turn up like we are? Or should we just have a 3rd person that we know is really going to turn up for this? So it's kind of like knowing what your resources are and tailoring your piece to best accommodate those resources. That's kind of the big editing thing that we went through. So there were several drafts for it, and we chopped it down to 4 songs instead of 6. And we were still pushing it with 60 minutes. Like and our load in was a lot too. So for me, like as the writer, having like a director that I like consistently work with, it's like kind of my anvil. That's a terrible analogy. I don't know what I'm like. He is iron sharpens iron. There we go.
Okay.
He is my
what?
other piece of
He
iron.
smashes you down?
Yeah, he smashes me down.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah. But having someone that you can like trust and bounce ideas off of and like work together and be like, hey, what do you think of this? And read this. And like a lot of people you'll send stuff to don't even read it. So there's that obstacle.
Don't send it to them.
Yeah, don't do it again.
Yeah.
Burn me once, shame on me or you.
I like
burn
that we're
me
really
twice.
getting these quotes
Whatever.
down.
We're crushing it.
Oh yeah, we're doing really good
We're going
analogies.
for tropes here, okay? Tropes only. Cool. So like this is like a more and we'll get to questions by the way in just a few minutes. But what I wanted to ask is like how do you address like writer's block, but also like vulnerability and like being like I could fail at any moment. How do you address that within yourself and the writing process to keep on going? Sorry, that was really energetic and then like a very.
Well, it helps that weed's legal.
There you
So
go. There you
there's
go.
that.
Oh, Roy.
I would recommend, like, go ahead and start your Fringe page. Like, go ahead and start your project. Like, come up with a title. Like, throw it up there. Like, have it ready as soon as possible. Because, like, just, like, committing to being on that website. Because you can start your page before you, like, sign up for anything. Like, I started mine and it was, like...
You can start it now, but you can't register till February 1st, if that makes sense.
But, like, you can add a bio, you can add a press release, you can add photos. Like, you can make it look as legit as possible without ever having written anything about it.
Fake it till you make
Fake
it.
it till you make
Yep.
it. And that's what I did at first, because I was like, if I'm on this, this is going to, like, mentally commit me to, like, actually following through with it. So, just, like, committing yourself. Once you make that down payment, you're locked in, though, so...
Yeah. Making yourself accountable and then accountable to others. So like if you have a team that you're working with, or even if not, like if you're writing a solo show and it's just you, then tell your close friends, like, all right, hey, I'm doing this. Keep me accountable. I don't want to quit, or because there are times where it can become overwhelming, or you forgot like, oh shit, I got to do programs, or I got to, I forgot we have to actually promote the show while we're still doing while we're still working on rehearsals and casting and all of that. So so it's really just having a support system helps, a lot, just to keep yourself accountable and to keep yourself sane, and so that you do follow through. So because you don't want to let, you just don't want to let yourself down, or or anyone else, but just have people that are going to around you that are going to lift you up.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, that ties back into the writers group thing, because then you'll have, like, mini deadlines, and the judgment is very low. And also, like, if you're really blocked, just, like, give yourself attainable goals. Like, I'm going to write a paragraph, or it can be total garbage, and you can delete it. Just, like, do something, because, like, the pressure that happens when you, like, feel like you should do something and you don't can, like, mount into this crazy anxiety. And, like, just giving yourself attainable goals like that, and having a group so that you're not, like, in the mania of your, like, private hell that is the brain when you have writer's block is, like, it seems like a good idea. Because, like, there's tons of other people who are trying to write and dealing with the same process, and just knowing, like, it's okay to try. It doesn't have to be right on the first time. It's good to remind yourself of externally through other people. And I would also highly recommend reading stuff and watching stuff that you would like to emulate or could be inspired by. I feel like that really put us on the right track when we were like, we want to do a 2-person show that's, like, abstract but emotionally intense and autobiographical. So, like, we read a whole bunch of plays before we started thinking about what we wanted to create, which then became something that was, like, unlike anything I had actually ever seen, but was very similar to a lot of things in tone. So, like, I think that helped. There's, like, a lot of reading and then a lot of not writing, as, like, the ideas sort of, like, gelled, and then there's, like, a ton of writing all at once. So also, they say that procrastination is sometimes a planning stage. So if you really can't write, maybe read something or watch something, and that might actually pay off better if you don't, like, force yourself to write the whole thing before you're entirely ready. So that's what I would say.
Totally. So this is, like, a kind of funner question before we go to our absolute last question, and then we'll get more questions from the audience. But just so people can kind of know what other types of shows are being presented at the Fringe, do you want to mention some other great shows that you've seen, maybe, like, the name of it and a little description in case they might get inspiration from those shows? Just, like, it can be other shows that you've written, people that you know have written, shows that you've enjoyed.
Just, like, a variety of
and a variety of cool different, like you were just saying before, remember we were like, oh yeah, Jonathan's show, or things like that.
Oh yeah, I've seen so many good shows.
Yeah.
I saw, like, 60 shows last year.
Oh my god.
Because I reviewed shows as well.
Also, remember, people do that. Like, so, like, when you're making your show, like, into a thing, like, account for that, because people who do that are mad when your show goes over time. Yes,
and then also, like, having been a reviewer, like, who's one of, like, the rare people who can actually give you press. If I saw a show that's, like, 75 minutes, I'm like, that's going to be one of my only 75-minute shows. If I see a show that's, like, 40 minutes, I'm like, I can fit that in. So just know from a marketing perspective that, like, I feel like we all feel a pressure to be like, I got to write a feature length or something. Like, 60 minutes is not even
20 minutes.
20. I did a show that was literally, like, 17 minutes long. And that's how I marketed it. I'm like, you're in, you're out, go get a drink at the bar. And everyone's like, okay. And, like, it was a beautiful show. And the fact that it was short made me able to do, like, really interesting physical comedy stuff that if it had been a half-hour show, my lead could not have done because he is out of shape. Like, because he was like fabulous for those, like, solid 3 minutes of hardcore physical comedy that we had, and because it was like, it wound up being an extremely polished show because it was like a 12-page script. So you can do really short shows, and then you save money on producing them because you don't need an hour-long slot. But that said, of course,
what was the name of that show?
That show is called 45 Milligrams. It was abstract. It was like, it felt like, I don't know, like Ionesco or something, like weird, funny, bizarre. My favorite solo show I saw is Mr. Yunioshi last year. Just, like, funny, interesting.
40 minutes.
Again,
Yeah.
Short is great. I cannot overstress. Some people do, like, they're like, this is my first play. It's 90 minutes long. I'm like, there's no reason it couldn't have been 60. I promise you. I promise.
And
like,
expanded in that like we had another show, one of the musicals that's coming up. Her show was 40 minutes during Fringe, and then she did a second run for 2 months that was an hour long that they extended it. So
Yeah.
you can always do that later.
I saw Buto Lady Macbeth. I'm allowed to say it if it's the name of the show. Like really interesting touring stuff, dance shows. What's the best? Last Croissant was an amazing ensemble show that was on the main stage over there, where it was like created as a group for their group. I saw so many
They're big
things.
cast, yeah.
I really like. Oh, and like political theater as well. There's like what is the name of the one about Bush Quayle?
Oh,
That guy.
Lucy's coming later.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch. I would like never think I would be interested in seeing a play about like Republican politics in the 80s, but it was fabulous.
That was
Because like
here-
the
in
character
here,
work was
It was in
yeah,
this
it was
room.
right next door.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And there was a show here where they did intentionally bad monologues, and you could throw socks at people on the stage throughout. So there's like really there's no limit to like this style, or like variety. You could go like poetic, expressive, dramatic. You could go comedic, musical, whatever. Like it's up to you.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure
not-
you guys have seen a million awesome shows too.
Yeah, it's like
Like my own.
yeah, right. But no, anything from also like shows like Mr. Uniyoshi. That was a
a
great
scholarship
show.
winner.
Oh, and a scholarship winner.
Yeah.
And it won best solo show and
And some other award.
some like award that he was up against like a million other people for.
Yeah.
So
that-
good.
Yeah, I was his mentor.
You were, yay!
Yes.
Yes,
so
I
good.
said.
He did such a
Yeah,
great
no,
job.
well, yeah, that was a great show. There were shows where like big production, musicals, which were a lot of fun. All the way down to just a lot of really great solo shows. There was a musical about like Pokemon. There
Yeah,
could be there could be like shows about like. Well, like, literally anything. That's the great thing about Fringe. There's pretty much literally anything and everything out there that you can do. So you can, whatever idea that you have, it'll be embraced. It's unique. That's the great thing about the Fringe community. People do support you, no matter what kind of crazy things that you might want to come up with. It's like for our show, ours was like, okay, we're just going to do a comedy variety show, which it sometimes can be like a palate cleanser for people that like, hey, I just saw like 4 very deep plays, and I feel sad about, like, oh, here, come have a drink and laugh, and then move on to the next thing, So there's a lot of variety. So like anything that someone's looking for, like, okay, I want to go see a show that's really going to make me think, or I'm going to go see a show that I just want to be entertained and kind of like escape into my own little world. You can do that.
I saw like a unique approach to like creating and like together. I saw a show that 2 guys did 2 30-minute shows in a 1 act.
Oh yeah.
It was Guilt and Man versus Armadillo. And so
Yes,
very
I saw that too.
very different shows, but
Yeah.
like everyone was on board with it, and they just were like, we're doing this together, we're just splitting the time. So that was really entertaining because it was really short, and it was like 30 minutes, a little breath, 30 more minutes. So that was like a
And they
unique.
had live percussion.
Yeah.
It was very Birdman.
It was very Bergman.
It was super cool. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I love it.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
And I saw Mackers in here
Oh.
my first year, and it was like a very farcical version of the Scottish play. Son of a Bitch was really great. Lucy's other show, Keeping Up with the Prozorovs.
Oh yeah, that was great too.
That's her
They
first one.
they did good work.
Right. She's
She's
strong
a
great.
speed dater if you guys want to get her advice later.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's cool. And their show was in Stephanie Fury, right?
The first one.
Prozorovs, I think. Yeah.
Prozorovs.
With McCadden.
McCadden.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So look at the venues too. because there's a lot, like Studio C, one of Matt's spots, we really like Studio C because it has a staircase in it, and it's got like some windows as well, and like the setup is just like really nice to do a lot of creative stuff in it. So like take a look at the images, the venues as well, because people will do like a lot of cool stuff with just like what's in the theater as well. Like the Gilton Man versus Armadillo, there's like a balcony up there, and they just put the band up there. They just did the percussion. So like take a look at the space to see how you can manipulate what's already there for you. Like they built this whole thing right here, but
This will just be black. Everything is just black.
Yeah, and also remember that some venues, if you really are like, no, I have this piece that has like, it needs a setup. There are venues that don't do a lot of shows, right? So there's like venues that do a lot of shows, and then there's venues that don't. And so if you did need that other style where you needed more time, you can buy that from those types of venues. That being said, it's a very different game, right? Because you're not with a lot of shows in your venue. So it can be like a unique thing. It can be there's like positives and negatives to every space. And we have a venue panel where you can kind of suss out what that's going to be that best sweet spot for you. Or bring in your own venue, which you can email support@hollywoodfringe.org if that's what interests you. So just right before we go, and also if you're looking, so this whole thing is like about getting inspiration, right? So if you're like, those shows kind of spoke to me, but I'm looking for something specific, please go into our search engine on the Hollywood Fringe site. You can see all 400 of the shows, or whatever number was over 400 from last year, or the year before, in all perpetuity. And you can like search it by genre and be like, this is the genre I'm looking for. You can kind of read descriptions and start to suss it out that way if you want to take inspiration from somebody else. Right before we go, or right before we answer some questions, do you want to give like one sentence of advice for your first time writing for the Fringe, or for writing in general? Just like a quick little quip. Like what's your quip? Not the toothbrush.
I think my big thing is like know what you're getting yourself into.
Sure.
I did not, but I did fine. But just like look at your dates, look at how much things are going to be, look at your team, like really plan out, because you don't want to find yourself like, oh, I've overcommitted and I'm like so lost. And you also don't want to find yourself like not prepared at all because you haven't given yourself the right accountability. So like joining a writing group, that's Matt in the back, by the way, that I mentioned earlier. There he is.
I'll be a speed dater later if you want to ask questions.
So find ways to like keep yourself on track and know what it is you're getting yourself into. It's not I feel like I'm making it sound like super daunting. It's not.
It is and it isn't. Like there's a structure, and a lot of people have done it before, but it is also a commitment.
If I could show up from Mississippi 10 days before this started and do a show, you can too.
And win an award, and do all these other things. It's that commitment level.
Yeah, I guess I would say, like, don't be afraid to ask for advice. Like, anybody who has done this before is very happy to give it. Like, seriously. Because it's free to give, and it's invaluable to receive. So there's nothing like actually doing something to learn, but you can kind of prepare yourself for any, like, surprises by asking people. Especially once you decide on a space or a venue, there might be stuff that somebody who already did it would be like, oh, just remember that this place is closed on Monday, so if you were going to schedule your tech for that day, you can't. Or, I don't know, random stuff like that. Or marketing stuff like, oh, this is the cheapest place to print your postcards. Or, oh, don't forget to put the logo in the corner, because if you don't, they won't display it, Like, so there's little things that you can forget. And people who have done it a million times, they're like, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do that? Did you do that? And that's easy for us to tell you and hard for you to know because it's your first time and tons of other people it's not.
Also, our panels are really important for that too, because we have, like, if you're like, I want to know all the things now,
Yeah.
We're not going to have them until the spring, but again, on Fringe TV, we have all of our panels from the past years, and it's not different. I mean, there's going to be updates, of course, which will come out in our participant packet, which comes out in April, which also has, like, this is the logo. Like, that's at /branding. If you're ever like, where's the Fringe logo? /branding. And on the Fringe site. And these types of things, although you should definitely find those people that you want to dialogue with, there's
They'll
also
also be-
tons of resources online.
Yeah.
And just scour our website, and it's all there.
Yeah.
Yeah, biggest thing, ask questions, use the Fringe community as a resource, because it really is helpful, because people want to see others succeed. It's not like a competition in that sense, like, so, people will give advice, people will, kind of give you like the do's and don'ts, and, and like, hey, you might make mistakes, but, just learn from them. As long as you learn from those, in the end, it'll be fine. So, say like, don't stress too much. I mean, stress, but not, because, Fringe can be a lot, but, as long as you know that going in and you prepare yourself for that, then you'll be okay.
The fact that you guys are all still here, speaks mounts.
Yeah.
Do we have questions? Cool.
Yeah, I had a very specific question for John. So,
Yeah, what's up?
My writing partner and I are conceiving a show that sounds almost identical to what you had originally conceived for your musical this year.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to know what were the reservations that made you change it to smaller cast, shorter time, and why?
So a lot of the price differences, like, go check out the venue packets, because
Okay.
like a 90-minute slot.
Oh, we don't discuss money in our panels, just to let you guys know, but you can always ask the venues directly, and they'll be really glad to discuss, like, specific dollar points.
Oh, I don't know any specific dollar points, so I just know that there are dollar points, and they're very specific.
Was that the primary?
That was not the primary.
Okay.
But that is
It
one
helps.
element.
Yeah.
So like a 50-minute at one place and a 60, like, just 10-minute different can, like, there's a difference. Other thing was, like, we had 5 people, and what it was going to be was bass, drums, electric, guitar, vocals, which is like 2 amps, a whole kit, a PA for the vocals. And so we were like, that's a lot to load in, and so we stripped it down to 1 guitar, drums. The guitar was plugged through the PA, so we just had one system that we're bringing in. And then just like we started writing this new show in November of last year. We'd only been in LA for like since May of last year, so like whatever that is, 6 months or something. And so we're like, we don't have like a ton of solid artistic friends that we know are gonna like put in the work, show up, learn their roles, not back out last minute. And we had such specific roles. I was like, if I'm gonna find a bassist, like, he better be committed, because like I don't know where I'm gonna find another bassist in LA, because I know no one. So that was kind of like knowing who I had in my wheelhouse of like artistic friends that I know would do well and commit was the biggest thing. And like having to manage 5 different schedules, having to figure out a place to do a live practice with that setup, electric, bass, drums, that really kind of, because you've got it, and all that is money too. If you want to have practice space, like if you want to go to one of the like little studios around town, that's like, can I test dollar points for a non-associated Fringe thing?
Oh, you mean like getting a practice? I mean,
Actually,
it's
I don't know dollar specifics on that either. So, but like,
It adds
it's
up.
money.
It adds up.
And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and even like that, like you were saying, there's varying price levels, and then there's also what you artistically want, right?
right.
Which is also something to take into consideration.
If I could piggyback off that, the first year I did Fringe, we did like an 80-minute musical with the ensemble that we created together, and then it was just like, it's harder to get people to watch it, and that really and like we also like, then we just were like, fine, only an hour, and we realized like, oh, we didn't need those extra 20 minutes.
Okay.
Like, I would highly recommend challenging yourself to fit it in an hour, because you will benefit fiscally and also like economy of story. like you'll find that you probably had a whole bunch of exposition that you didn't really need, or that there was a character that didn't really offer much. And like Ellen was saying, like, of course you can expand, but I feel like know your audience. This is a Fringe audience. They're trying to fit in multiple shows in a day. If you're going to take 90 minutes out of their schedule, that's a big sacrifice you're asking them to do. Not just like your time is worth a ton here. And like if I could go see like 2 40-minute shows in the amount of time that I see yours better be amazing. And you better have amazing buzz, cuz like literally when you like talk in the bar like, "Oh, what'd you see? This. How long's it?" 90. Nope. That's like the first thing people will say. Not to be like down, but I'm just like, it's legit. Like if something is awful and it's 20 minutes, you might still go see it because you're like, just cause I can. You know, like I cannot undervalue, like as a person who sees back-to-back shows, how much I love the writer who writes a shorter and economical show. I'm like, I love you, thank you.
And it's good to get like non-theater people to see that, right, too, because if you're writing for, even if you're like, well, I have my own built-in audience. I'm like a very famous person, and so I can bring whoever I want into my theater. I don't need the other audiences. You still want to think about like, who are those people?
Yeah.
And what's their attention span?
And if you're catering for Fringe audience, that's a different audience. Let's say you extend or you got a run, then you can do the 90-minute show because people are coming only for your show. Mm-hmm. And like maybe you use Fringe as like a testing of the first incarnation of your show. Then you can add the extra half hour when you do it at like the White Hall, or what is that?
The White Fire.
The White, or like
that's
someplace
like a lot
in,
of solo shows, right?
They've done other stuff. It's like there's a few, like, you know, North Hollywood theaters you could rent out and then do a dedicated show, like, once you...
Run,
but, like, for Fringe, I would definitely recommend being more economical with your time and runly.
Yeah, because more people will recommend some of those shows. Like there's a musical last year, Support of White Parents. It's only 30
She's on
minutes.
the next panel.
Mm-hmm. She is.
Yeah, it was only 30 minutes. I saw the show like
Not
3
astonishing.
times and brought other people to go see it. Cause like, oh hey, it's short,
fun, it's fast,
it's
cute,
fun,
yeah.
like, and you get to the point, get in, get out, go to the next show.
Yeah.
And she's the one that extended hers from 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
For her extended run.
Yeah, cause like anything more than an hour, you are asking a lot of your audience, especially if they're going to go see other things.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to compensating the cast and crew, whether it's with food, cash, or hugs, talk a little bit about
Mostly
that,
hugs.
Especially when you don't really know how successful your show's going to be, so you don't know how much you'll end up making from it.
That's a great question.
If it's like a musical or something, I would recommend always compensating your musicians. Actors are used to working for free, unfortunately. That's the world we live in out here. But I do, like, some people are like, oh, it's very hard to make money at Fringe, to be perfectly honest, because you're spending a ton of money if you're renting rehearsal space, if you're, you know, doing this, that, and other thing, like your marketing.
Marketing is going to cost you money.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But that said, I think it is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, if you are budgeting and saving, I think it's lovely to at least offer some kind of a stipend, even if it's just a gesture. That's what our friend who wrote the play that I directed and produced, he wound up, you know, like, paying $100 because people are taking time out of their schedule, so he gave everybody $100 for their time. And he paid our choreographer because we also rehearsed at his house, so we didn't have to rent a space. But again, like, that's usually the last item in your budget because, like, a lot of the times people just, I don't know. I know very few people who get paid to do Fringe shows, to be honest. But you will get better talent if you do offer something.
Sure. Yeah, it's like for us, like for our first year, we used what money we did make, and we just threw a big party for the cast. Right. So we just, like, you know, all right, you know, got some, basically kind of like the potluck thing. Like, we bought a bunch of beer, bought a bunch of, you know, got, you know, some food, you know, delivered, and just did that, because especially if you have a large cast. Yeah, that's going to add up real quick.
Yeah.
If you don't have that kind of budget.
But with that large cast, that's why you had not such strict, like, you have to be here every time, because you're able to have a large cast that you didn't pay. But you guys were an ensemble that people could dip out if they had other commitments, right?
Right, exactly. Like kind of structuring rehearsals where, because we had it where we essentially had call times within our rehearsals so that no one had to be there for the whole 3 hours. Sometimes like someone had, hey, I got a show I'm doing or getting off of work, whatever. Okay, I can come in. All right, you can come in at 9 instead of 8. This person can leave at 8:30 because their scenes are done. They don't have to stay for the whole thing. So that kind of helps too. Like as far as with like if you're not able to pay, being flexible with with scheduling, because a lot of other people are giving their time to you for that. So any little thing that you can do to kind of ease that burden a bit helps. Making sure that they're not, paying for things, because also we sold concessions at our shows, so a lot of times, we would make sure that definitely helps, to recoup some of that money. But then also, we would have snacks and stuff to drink for our cast and guests in the green
water.
room.
Sell water because it gets hot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Be upfront. Like, that's the big thing. Like, in
Yeah.
your first table readings, like, you're getting it together. Be like, we were just like, we can't compensate you. That's another reason why we stripped it down so small, because, like, we wanted to have people that didn't feel like their time was being wasted, that wanted to be there to work on the project. Like, our team was 5 people, and 3 of us were producing, 3 of us were in it, and the other one was just, like, helping with house. So it was, like, really, like, a small team to put it together, people that were invested and weren't expecting anything out of it. Also, with our shows, we charge $5 to see the show. So, like, when we go into Fringe, we know we're not going to make any money. And, like, we're willing to do that because we care more about having people come see our show, our friends who are also poor and struggling artists, like, them being able to say, yeah, I'll come because it's only $5, instead of being like, oh, 15. I don't want, like, one of my, like, a show of somebody that was, like, I was pretty good friends with in the Fringe community. I had a comp ticket and I wanted to get another ticket to a show, and he was like, things are pretty tight right now, and so, like, I bought it. Like, totally cool, totally willing, but, like, the way that he had structured within his like, mindset and how his team was set up and what was going on for him, like, making a ticket sale was really important for him. And so for us, we're like, yeah, sure, come on. And, like, I think we don't make a lot of money on our shows, but that's what we choose to do. And so I think that's a big thing that you have to ask for yourself. Like, are you actually trying to break even? Are you trying to make profit? Or are you just trying to put up art and share it with people?
Yeah, and making profit is, can be tough. There are, there's some shows, especially like a lot of the immersive shows where they don't really have a venue, so it's easier to make money that way. But then there are some, like, that also takes into account of, like, how many people are going to get to go see your shows, because it's like, okay, you're charging $30 a ticket. Oh, I can go see 6 shows for $5 each, versus one $30 show. Is like, this show better be good and be worth the money, because especially for the other fringers, like, we did things like our preview was pay what you can for everyone. Like, all of our shows, like, if you were a participant in Fringe, we only charged $5, because we know that, like, especially if you're a producer, you're already spending a couple of $1,000s on this, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, give them a break.
Do we have any other questions? Any of them? No? Oh.
I guess, like, if you're looking for outside resources as far as talent, like, what resources would you recommend for somebody who doesn't necessarily have that, like, creative vision?
Backstage is a big one, because backstage is, like, a lot of people who are just getting to the city, a lot of people who are specifically wanting to look for theater projects. LA Casting and stuff is more film. So backstage is really solid. A lot of people in Fringe use backstage. You'll see casting calls go up there. And a lot of people, I'm a part of a drunk Shakespeare troupe, and we use backstage. And that's been really good for finding people who, like, when we're upfront about the project immediately, like, people that are like, oh yeah, I'm not going to get paid. I will do Shakespeare intoxicated. Like, you find people that are like, you can have a conversation with them in the audition, like, hey, what's your commitment like? Is this something you'd be interested in? If you don't get this role, how do you feel? Like, you can have like a really honest conversation with them. And the type of people that Backstage attracts are like people that are pretty like hungry and like new and ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah. Also, even just like the Fringe Facebook pages.
Yeah,
A lot of like last year, a few producers got together. So like, hey, we're going to have group auditions, and and like they split the cost of actually getting an audition space, and and people came in, people were able to cast their shows that way too. So yeah, especially if you don't know, yeah, I agree. Yeah, Backstage is great. Yeah, it's reaching out to just different theater communities.
Yeah,
Would it be similar advice for finding directors?
yeah. And also, there's specific Facebook pages for that and technical theater
Yeah.
groups. Like, there's like a lot of Facebook resources for that. They're in our participant packet. And also, if you get to know some lovely fringers, they'll add you to the page. I would say. And also, getting to know people at office hours is like one thing that
office
I
hours
know,
is
but that I've always like kind of. I'm there, so I see it happen. People will be like, I don't have an actor, and it's April, or it's a week before Fringe, and they're like running around like talking to people because
Yeah.
like somebody got sick or dropped out of their show, and they'll be like, by the end of office hours, they'll be like, oh yeah, how's it going? They'll be like, oh, I found somebody. Yeah, I'm good. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just kind of getting to know people. Like you said, it's going to be the people you know.
Yeah, office hours are great too, because like from 2 years, just from the last 2 years I've been doing it, yeah, I've made actual friends from this, and then working with them on projects now, and so it can be a good resource, and also like the office hours, that's where a lot of your audience is coming from too. When you're talking about your show, you're asking about theirs, and so, oh, okay, this seems interesting. Like, yeah, I'll go, because you want to not just support it because, oh yeah, this show sounds cool, but the people that you meet, like, hey, you know what, I want to go support them because like I like them.
What office hours are, I feel like that's weird, is they're bar meetups every Wednesday starting in March. We have bar meetups for anyone who's participating in the Hollywood Fringe. And we also have off-season office hours, which are bar meetups once a month outside of that that are happening. Our next one is December 10th. I think I said it at the beginning.
And there are the meetups that are not at a bar.
And there are other meetups, yeah. We also have Dining About Fringe. We have like other meetups that aren't specifically about drinking. And we're trying to expand upon that to have that, drink life balance. But just because we don't have too much time, I think we'll take a little bit of a break. The other space, which is the studio.
The smaller one, yeah.
Yeah, the studio is going to be where the Immersive 101 panel is, and the other panel will be in here. Yeah, we'll be up here for a couple minutes if you have anything more specific. Yay! Woo! Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
It's so nice
thank
to
you.
see you. Here, we should take a picture before,
Yeah.
and then I'll send it to y'all. I know that Royce is all on that social.
Good.